The problem of wealth inequality is something that is hard for people to really get their minds around and really understand the magnitude of the problem. And I think the best analogy is to think about, maybe you've seen these videos where they show the relative sizes of celestial bodies. And they'll show first the Earth next to the moon, and you see the relative sizes of the two, and then they go out and they show you the rest of the planets, and Jupiter is so big, and then they show you the sun, and the Earth looks like a little pea next to the sun, and then they zoom out some more, and they show you a star, another star that makes our sun look like a pea. And then they'll go out further and they show another super giant star that makes this other giant star look like a pea. And our sun, you can't even see anymore, it's so tiny. And that's the scale that we're talking about when we're talking about billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. And there are all kinds of statistics about how the top 1% has more money than the bottom 50% and things like that. It's like if you got 10 people in a room and one person has 99% of the wealth, how are you going to have any kind of how are you going to function that way? So the scale of it is one thing, and it's the mainstream media never talks about this because they're owned by these super wealthy people. And when it's talked about, a lot of times it's framed as a question of freedom. Should someone be allowed to get rich? I mean, it's my right? I have a right to, be successful and get money, get rich. Well, that's a red herring. Nobody is questioning that you have the right to get rich. We also have agreed that we're going to have taxation in this country. And that's how we're going to pay for our broadly shared prosperity. So, but the process has been bought by the wealthy. They control Congress. They control, the tax system. But all that aside, what I really want to talk about is the mentality of the wealthy, and for us to understand what's happening there. Now, if you get money, it feels good. When you get a big chunk of money, it's a rush. It's exciting. It feels good. And naturally you want to have that feeling again, and maybe have even more excitement by getting even more money. And that's, of course, everybody feels that way. Most everybody. But it's like a gambler. It becomes an obsession, and it can become your only source of excitement in life. And that's what you keep pursuing, that rush, that thrill. And you're like a junkie, for your excitement. And so, people look at the super wealthy and they say, well, he's got more money than he could possibly spend in 100 lifetimes. How much is enough? When are you gonna just, have enough money and not need to keep accumulating it. But that's not the right question. You know, a heroin addict is not going to say, well, I guess I've had enough heroin for one lifetime. I'll I don't need to have any more. They won't stop until disaster strikes. They won't stop until something forces them to stop. And the super wealthy are the same way. They're going to keep in that same addiction of acquiring wealth until they die, or until something, until disaster strikes and they're forced to stop. And, a junkie will do whatever they can to keep it going. They'll steal the copper wires out of your house to buy their drugs. And the ultra wealthy, they'll steal your whole house. They'll steal everything just to keep it going. So, in the same way that a junkie is a menace to society, so are these wealthy people. And they need an intervention. Or at the very least, they need to just pay their damn taxes. We need to disengage money from politics, change the tax code, and just make them pay their fair share, and they'll be fine. They'll be fine. They'll be okay. They don't have to worry that they're going to be annihilated. They're going to still be wealthy. We'll take a slight percentage of their wealth, and they'll be fine. But we need to just see and understand how they really are and deal with them accordingly.